Perfect. Welcome everyone to Bright Young Things. I didn't expect so many people to come. 5:00. Nice to meet you. I'm Zamil. I'm a strategist at Kids Know Best. I sit down with kids and understand what they want and help brands understand that. So that's basically what I do. I'll pass it along to Thierry to give himself a quick intro as well.
Sweet, yeah. My name is Thierry. I am the head of insight at a brand and performance agency called Journey Further. Previously, I was at Rise at 7, so for anybody that knows Sheffield, literally just behind the Peace Gardens there. And my role is to infuse and inspire data in everything that we do. Everything from trends, understanding what is happening on the pulse of, if it is even a trend, like proving that. So everything from brands for the likes of Game, PlayStation, Pretty Little Thing, Misguided. Oh, no one from there is here. So I did a great job there. And yeah, so I've been doing this for many, many a year. So if you do want to catch me afterwards as well, I love talking everything trends and how to make data interesting and viable as a business. So please do grab me.
Hello, I'm Estelle. I'm also a creative strategist here at Kids Know Best, so I work with Zamil quite closely. And my role is essentially to translate kind of brand briefs as such into languages that kids speak. Essentially kind of coming up with creative ideas around how to allow brands to talk directly to kids. Lovely to meet you all.
And my name's Brandon Ralph. I'm the CEO of Studio B, and my background's in consultancy, all around understanding young people. I built a company when I was in school, and at Studio B, we create content for teens and young adults, so 14 to 24-year-olds, and we're currently raising money to launch our own platform, which is kind of like YouTube meets Netflix, with the feeling of MTV, which was actually way a big thing before I was even born.
So we're called the Bright Young Things, and that name is a bit controversial, that one. We're supposed to be all under 25s. I don't look under 25. I can promise you I am under 25. Believe it or not. But basically what we want to talk about today is a bunch of different things. We've got a roaming mic if anyone wants to ask questions in between. But I suppose we'll start somewhere super controversial, or not controversial, up to you. Social mobility. Estelle, social mobility. What are your thoughts on that? And what do you think? What do you think?
Would you like me to answer that question in the context of this particular context?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think the first thing is that we want to talk about social mobility in the context of social media, in the sense that we think that social media in many ways kind of democratizes content and creativity and skill, and therefore offers young people or just people in general the opportunity to raise through the ranks in kind of niches that they can champion on social media. So we think there's definitely a correlation. We're not necessarily talking about class here, but we're talking about the ability to essentially carve out success stories regardless of your credentials in that space, and that's all thanks to social media, and essentially the ways that people kind of shine today is a very different space to the way that it used to be. Everyone's got a voice, everyone's got a chance. So that's kind of the framing of this conversation today.
And to jump in, I think that it's really, really interesting to look at the effects that social media ironically haven't had on young people. I think there's common misconceptions about how young people use social media, and I think young people have actually kind of demonstrated relative savviness to the social media channels that they choose to use. For example, the beast that is Facebook has been on decline for young audiences for 5-10 years, and the rise of TikTok and the use of that, I think, is kind of a consequence of young people's attitudes and their kind of picking of their desires. And I think a lot of a lot of media likes to talk about the damage that social media does to young people, but I think it also represents a rather unique opportunity that people that didn't grow up with social media like us folks and haven't had it ingrained in our life maybe don't appreciate and realize. And I think I'm kind of excited as well to see what future generations end up doing with the tools that we have today, for years to come.
And I guess with the social mobility, I think for me, I can approach it in two ways, because I think there is a social mobility in terms of the business level. So if we look at everything from like Binley Mega Chippy, for example, that's just recently happened, like what on earth was that? Right? It puts businesses on a kind of a bit of a level playing field, and it's now no longer who has the biggest budget and who has the biggest ad spend and who can afford the out-of-home advertising and who is bidding for X amount of keywords or has got the biggest paid social budget. But now actually it's a little bit more about creativity and timing at that point, staying culturally relevant, staying at the pulse of what people are actually thinking. And therefore, how can you leverage that content for your audience? Now, there's a bit of a mistake some businesses make there in terms of jumping on something they shouldn't jump on. So like NFTs in the metaverse is a perfect example. Everybody released 1,000 different things, whereas actually where's the relevance now? And you've spent 200 grand at that point, right? And there's absolutely no relevance there. So there is social mobility from a business perspective in terms of there's a level playing field now. It's no longer about, who has the biggest spending power. But then the other side of it as well, in terms of social mobility for me, is when it comes to, yes, the creators have social mobility and everybody kind of his own level playing field in terms of the ability to create content. But where it becomes a little bit touchy and sketchy is when trends happen, but the originators and the creators aren't cited. And so we've seen this really in like the Black creator community, where a lot of the trends have come from Black creators, but then they're not actually credited. So yes, there's a level playing field, but when it comes to giving credit back to who the creators are, I think that platforms have been a bit poor on that. And I think that is something that you've seen, Instagram talk about in terms of creating like citations and where things are coming from, etc. So there is still a big thing, for us to fix in that realm. But yes, we do have a level playing field, but credit due where credit's due for everybody, businesses and creators.
Yeah, and when talking about social mobility, it sort of takes me back to when I was growing up. I in 2004, 2005, YouTube came out, and I posted my first ever video on YouTube. It was me playing with my WWE action figures in my friends. In my friend's, I'll get you back. In my friend's living room, and we basically just hit them together and told a story, right? And what I want to talk about there is now. Back then, we had a little Nokia phone that we put the video on, and then we put it on the internet. But now it's so much easier. It's literally 2 clicks, and you can put a video online. And platforms like, we're going to talk about it a lot, TikTok, allows creators to do pretty much anything. You can make a video of you in like the middle of the Bahamas. You can make a video of you like animated, anything. You can do pretty much anything on TikTok now. And I think that level of, again, like equality, like people can make content so easily on those platforms now, that you need to look at it from a brand perspective. How can I see what they're doing, and how can I apply that to my brand, and how can those little trends be part of what I do in the content that I make? And I think, Estelle, you had a few bits on like brands and social mobility.
Yeah, I was just off the back of what you just said. I think perhaps like a niche that we're entering at the moment, especially with TikTok, and we're going to keep talking about this, is that also related to social mobility. Creators aren't necessarily confined to their followers or following anymore. So what that means is that anybody obviously has the opportunity to create content, but the kind of social space that we're living in now basically means that we're able to post content, and that content can be exposed to anyone, not necessarily confined to your following or your network or the people that you're associated with, or the people that know you already. So that's kind of where we're at now. What that essentially means for brands as well, in the same way as individuals all have kind of viral potential, brands also have viral potential. So brands that potentially have a very strange niche, or don't necessarily have any credentials in the space that kids are already speaking about, let's say. The beauty of platforms like TikTok is that because you're not confined to your already existing audiences, you will have viral potential. what that means is that everyone has a voice essentially, or has the chance to have a voice. Although we were talking about earlier how that a lot of that comes down to luck.
Yeah, well TikTok, I think, has the best content engine that humanity has ever made. You know, and that's not really an understatement. And I think, you know, Andy Warhol used to say that everybody has their 15 minutes of fame, but I think more now on TikTok, everyone has their 15 seconds of fame. Because, you know, TikTok is really, really, I think, an interesting, very, very interesting in how it differs from YouTube. YouTube, you know, back in 2005, and throughout the last 18 years of its existence, has always rewarded content that is longer, or that is of a higher quality increasingly. And actually, I think TikTok ends up doing the opposite. And TikTok, the reason its engine is so powerful and so interesting is because if you're looking for a niche and you spend long enough on the platform, you'll find your niche on TikTok. And I think, you know, the opportunity is more so in user-generated content and using that, you know, to your benefit. But I think a lot of the work that I do and the discussions I have is often people get very caught up in how they perceive their brand and how they want people to perceive their brands online. But a lot of the time, particularly on TikTok, people will perceive your brand how they want to perceive their brand. And if you try and restrict creativity, and I think this happens a lot at, you know, we're at the Children's Media Conference with children's media, with very expensive media products. I think the opportunity of how you can build long-term success for your brand is actually giving audiences and people freedom to play around with your assets. So whether that's your catchy song in your theme tune, or whether that's, you know, your funny characters, to be able to bundle those onto TikTok and such, or, you know, allow. I think, you know, there was a period, I don't quite know if we're in that period anymore, particularly in lockdown, of kids watching kids shows that was on YouTube. And back in the day, there was this very kind of big series called Kids React and Teens React that was made by a group called the Fine Bros. But you've got to give, you know, channels like that and creators like that the freedom to kind of play with your brand, to create, I think, new identities and new images. And in the example we were discussing around before was what's happened over the weekend, which has been with the biggest movie release over Memorial Weekend July the 4th weekend in America, which has been the Minions movie, which has just blown up on TikTok.
Yeah, like, has anyone seen what's been happening on social? The gentleman walking into cinemas, like, so random, so random, and that's what social media allows creators, and it sort of helps brands as well. Like, when someone wants to take your thing and, like, tell it in their way, and sort of amalgamate it and like change it and sort of share their opinion on it.
To ruin the illusion for Minions a bit, because I was a consultant on that.
I was gobsmacked when he told me this.
It wasn't an accident. So it wasn't. It was orchestrated by a marketing firm, which I shall keep thy identity secret. But without going into too much depth, but the fact that the trend started was not an accident, and it was an orchestrated thing. And I think it's the marketing agency and I think Universal did not plan it to reach, which I've got some statistics here, 8.2 billion views on TikTok. It was never planned to be that big, but that there is, I think, an interesting kind of correlation between how brands use it and how they can effectively do it. And there's some really, really smart people out there that understand that you can build trends now using catchy music. So like the music and the sound itself was what we call in the industry a pattern interrupt song. And so it essentially makes you stop scrolling, shall we say, on TikTok, so it stops you scrolling. And then it's also really catchy and repetitive. So the song, you know, kind of gets stuck in your head and it builds a habit when you see it. You know, I think essentially, you know, for those of you that don't know the trend, pulls up a group of 20 people pulling up in a theatre with full suits. It's got a Minion version of a Yeet song, which is very sort of interesting. And that was essentially built out of the fact that the first big page that was paid, which was House of Highlights, reposted the original one, and now that video is also gone. And you know, essentially what happens on TikTok when trends start getting born is that they, you know, very quickly build virality around. And, you know, some of the things that I saw over the weekend, one group managed to sneak in 200 pounds of bananas into a theatre. And several got the police and the fire department called on them for being far too wild. But generally, and this is, I think, you know, the news media is kind of focused on them. There's just... when I checked this morning, just under 150,000 people on TikTok that have done the trend or posted videos about it. The vast majority of those have stayed wholesome, but it's I think the example of something that's the Minions that we kind of grew up watching the first Despicable Me, but the campaign was targeted at teens and young adults, and I think brought a lot of them back to the theatre. But we'll learn more about, I think, that data in the next few weeks.
I felt very naive when I found out that was staged. I should know that I work in the industry, but I think that shows the power of TikTok. I actually believed, after having read, that this was actually just an accident that blew up, and obviously it wasn't. But I think TikTok does have the power to do that, and I think, people believe that it was an accident because that's the media landscape we live in.
And the thing is as well, like, when I heard about that story, for me, it was actually even smarter than I'd previously anticipated, because we're in a bit of a moment of, like right now where, you know, we've got a cost of living crisis, margins are smaller than they've ever been from a brand perspective, and so then the first thing usually to fall is the marketing, right? So the marketing spend gets pulled back, whether it's TV, out of home, whatever that may be. The most expensive thing gets culled back, but then it's well researched that if maintaining your during recession, maintaining your excessive share of voice relative to your market share during a recession means brands grow. So the likes of Gymshark and things like that all came from recession periods. And that's because they didn't turn off. If anything, they actually went for cheaper forms of media as a way to keep that excessive share of voice so they can stay alive and loud during the recession periods where people are pulling spending. So then actually looking at that Minion case study, then I was like, that's actually even smarter, because they've got enough budget to have gone everywhere and gone silly and it still be absolutely incredible. But what they did actually was pull back that spending, went to quite cheaper channels where other brands aren't actually doing it successfully relative to their field, and have stayed loud enough during a recession period to grow their brand at a time where other brands are shrinking.
It's kind of like the illusion of authenticity, I'd say. Like, it's like it was an illusion, but it was also...
I think it was to an extent, but there was still a group of people that came up with the idea for it. You know, ideas don't come out of thin air. And I think, what you say about cost, I don't know cost figures really. I wasn't that kind of involved in that side of it, but it was an extremely cheap campaign. TikTok is a ridiculously cheap medium to get into at the moment, and even if you buy adverts on TikTok, they're ridiculously cheap compared to if you buy adverts on YouTube or on Facebook. And I think it's because, you know, in some ways, it's really difficult to kind of get things off the ground. But if you do it right and you get that right, you know, you mentioned Binley Mega Chippy. I'm 99.999% sure that was not orchestrated in any way. But what a lot of people realize about that is the person singing the song is an AI. It's not a real person. It was put into a text-to-speech generator and made as a song. And to my knowledge, Binley Mega Chippy themselves didn't make it either. But somebody obviously came up with a funny idea of a local tip shop and used the TikTok text-to-speech generator to essentially make a song that then went ridiculously viral. and queues and queues of people outside of Binley Mega Chippy. The poor people in there.
I suppose the flip side of that is, as a brand, do you have the right to play as well in those spaces? So, for example, if you look at Ryanair, I'm not sure if anyone's seen some of their meme content. They just do some funny stuff. You should check it out. But like they've created sort of this meme TikTok account where they make fun of stuff. So, for example, me, a purchaser of a Ryanair flight, I'm like, that's £9. And then there's like an objection, right? Which is like, do I get free baggage with that? And then like Ryanair openly like mock people on their TikTok page, and like that's really tough for a brand to do because you don't want to mock your customers, right? But Ryanair have bought a right to play by making that content. So they're in your face and they're constantly making that content, and now they can openly take the mick out of people for complaining about a £9 a ticket to Spain or whatever. So there's also that element of, if you do see a trend, if you do see something that's happening, for example, the Minion thing, it's very easy to say, yeah, guys, let's go do it. Let's just jump in and do it, which is also an all right tactic to take. But also you need to figure out whether your brand has the right to play in that space. Like if you do that, is your core consumer going to be like, this isn't what this brand stands for? So that's the balance you have to find. Like what spaces do you have the right to play? And if you don't have the right to play, you need to have those steps to get to the right to play, like what Ryanair did, which is like, let's just make this meme content, let's make it soft, and then once everyone's sort of like buttered up a little bit, now let's cuss them out, So there's also that. But I really like what Brandon was saying about niches and like platforms. And one thing that we really wanted to sort of discuss with you guys is the author versus the story. So TikTok, the buzzword, is it's a algorithmic platform. So there's a For You page, there's a follow page. Growing up, when I was on Instagram, every single post was, chronological order. So Billy posted at 9, Andy posted at 9:01. So everything goes down like that. But the non-chronological order changed, and then TikTok has the For You page, which means it serves you content. So if I end up liking, I don't know if anyone's seen Andrew Tate on their pages, but if you accidentally see one of his pieces of content and watch it for more than 1 second, all of his content is going to now be on your For You page. So.
Sorry, I was going to say, the thing that I absolutely love is when politicians go into committees and they admit that they see lots of young children on their page. And we all know in the industry that essentially, if you're seeing lots of young children on your page, it's because you've been looking at videos of young children on TikTok.
Yeah. So I have a mate, and we always make this joke. Like he on his TikTok page, he sees like people like funneling through rubbish, and I'm like. And he's like, I don't know how I get this, man. And I'm like, I know how you get this. You've been watching it without telling anyone. But and that is the unfortunate part about TikTok, which is it tracks you pretty much everything. But what I'm trying to say is, with that, we want to discuss a bit about the author and the story. So with the For You page, right, you discover content. So when I grew up, and I think when we all grew up, we followed specific things, right? So, for example, on YouTube in 2010, for example, I would subscribe to KSI, and I would watch all of his videos because I'm subscribed to him. But on TikTok, I've never watched a single KSI video. It's all just served to me. And that's where we want to discuss like the author and the story. So is the author, do they still hold the power because of all these algorithmic changes on TikTok and Instagram Reels? Everything's on chronological now. Or is the story where the power is? So for example, the Minion thing, you'd see loads of Minion things on your For You page because that's what's happening right now. You won't see who you're following, for example. I'm sure everyone has like pain points on like Instagram or Facebook. You're seeing content that's not from like your family members, because that's the whole reason you most likely joined it, was to see pictures of your family members and all those things. But now you're just seeing things that are non-chronological, right? So it's served to you. So the question I have to pose to you guys in the panel is, what is more important? Who has the power, the author or the story?
Go for it. Okay. I mean, I'll have a little one on this, because for me as well, it's The stories nowadays as well, it used to be long form content. It still kind of is to an extent, but the stories that we're talking about and in the context we're talking about, a lot of them are trends, right? And trends are flash in the pan. They happen 30 seconds a week maybe, and everything's kind of gone. And so this is where we're always kind of talking about whether brands should play in that space or not, because ultimately, yes, I can get involved in a Binley Mega Chippy trend and it's popping, but actually, do I see an ROI outside of that trend? Probably not. I get caught up in the story. And I'm no longer that creator. Whereas, as you say, like with Ryanair, who carve out their own content there and kind of own that author and creator space is absolutely amazing. And we've seen it where actually creators who don't take part in trends actually end up doing better, in my opinion, because they own their audience and they own their own share of voice. And that's when they can start doing things like releasing their own merch or doing collaborations or, and these things actually physically sell out because there is a bit of a cult effect around a certain creator as opposed to there isn't a cult effect around a trend. And so then that's why it's called a feed, right? It's constantly feeding you those trends, quite simply.
So
There's
like
just so much to come.
if you went down the story route, you'd be just chasing trends.
It doesn't end. It's a treadmill. I think a story route is a treadmill. Unless it's your own narrative that you've cultivated, as a brand, you're out and you're purposeful. You want to change a certain thing, or you're trying to create a audience around a certain movement. Then that has longevity, and that is the creator kind of cultivating that conversation. Whereas you have no control over what's trending next week. We have no control, absolutely none. And so then if we're chasing that story in the realm of trending content, then it's a bit of a treadmill and exhausting and expensive.
And I think as well, if you're looking to find your voice, and looking to commercialize, TikTok is actually terrible for commercializing on. I mean, I don't know how many of you saw the keynote with Ben yesterday, but YouTube is probably for online digital space is the best way to make money because they literally give 55p of every pound that they make back to the people that make the videos. And TikTok has a creator fund which will pay you pennies. Yes, you can do brand deals, but you kind of, if you're the sort of creator that literally just goes on trends, the concept that your kind of your branded video is going to hit is very unlikely. And the success stories that I've seen come out of TikTok, both for brands and I think for for individuals and for creators, is really about translating their audiences across different platforms as well. So we've spoken a lot about TikTok, and I think TikTok's a really valuable tool in building awareness, which probably puts it more hedged with the likes of traditional TV advertising than anything else. But nowadays, really, you've got to be kind of wherever you feel like your audience is. And so if you're building something for young people and kids, don't be on Facebook, and probably don't be on Instagram because Instagram is kind of slowly moving out of phase. But definitely be on YouTube, definitely be on TikTok, and definitely sort of like build that presence in environments where they are. And yeah, find that tone of voice that you can find that's a bit more playful. And it's sometimes okay to have different tones of voices across different platforms as well. Ryanair is very jokey on TikTok, but is a lot more serious on Twitter when it's replying to customers or responding to flight delays. It's kind of, I think, in some ways, sitting back and thinking about the audience that you're trying to attract on these platforms, and then maintaining your voice, because you can play with different trends and you can play with that, but you really want to kind of build. Ironically, you want to get your audience and your brand off of TikTok as quickly as possible in people's minds.
We often, at Kids Know Best, we often apply this author versus story kind of debate to the music industry, in the sense that we're finding when brands are coming to us and asking, how can we build kind of emotional attachment to up-and-coming artists, or whether it might be a new musical IP, etc. It's kind of a challenge in this author versus story debate, because kids aren't really calling out artists as individuals anymore. Like, the artist is kind of losing significance, or the author, if we're talking about it in this sense, is losing its significance just because the likelihood of being relevant in the playground is completely bound to the trends or the social currency that you offer someone. So when you're thinking about the music industry and artists, kids aren't necessarily becoming obsessed with an individual anymore. They're becoming obsessed to the trend that it allows them to talk about. So yeah, it's an interesting space in the sense that music kind of record labels are definitely not the same as they used to be.
Do you reckon the way we churn through trends from the music industry now is similar to the way we are churning through that trend is the same way as we're churning through authors now, and that's why it's harder to call out, because one day you're Drake, the next day you're me. Like it's not like the speed at which we're churning through authors is affecting.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's definitely a con, I would say, to social media. It's like a pro in so many ways, but I guess it means that we're just kind of spoiled with content, and that means that the shelf life and the relevance is like a flash in the pan, as you say.
Yeah.
So 100%, yeah.
I think that the speed at which media moves and how reactive things need to be and how quick things come in and out of trend is probably something that's going to stick around for a long time. And it's a level of naivety if you think you can build a brand in the same way that brands have been built for the last 50 years or so. I think it's creators now, as individuals, play a big role in the ecosystem and play a humongous role in young people's lives. I grew up, and I'm very fortunate now to work with loads and loads of big creators, and a lot of them I grew up idolizing when I was younger. And when I go to award ceremonies and see celebrities and everyone's like, this person, I literally couldn't care less. And I think it's that nature of how things are moving. And TikTok, I think, has allowed things to move even quicker. So Spotify has a huge problem with Gen Z moving away and not using Spotify as much. And that's purely because a lot of young people today are listening to their music on TikTok, or they're caring less about music and more. And TikTok, I think, is that weird balance where if you want to listen to some music or get that feeling that music gives you, but also have video content as well, there isn't a music video, you can sort of enjoy music in a different way. And I think the record labels have been quite smart about this, and they've definitely built some new artists, but the landscape is fundamentally changing, probably quicker than we can cover in this session. And I think it's that ability in some ways, and it goes back to kind of finding that niche, and it's the fact that there are TikTok creators, for example, that their biggest videos are trend videos, but they have a core small audience, much smaller than their follower count and much smaller than than you'd think. But they do have core kind of super fans. And actually, I think we're going into a new generation of creators and a new generation of media where you can build and sustain people's jobs on quite small audiences. If you've got 100 super fans that are willing to pay you £10 a month, that's £1,000 a month. So that's equivalent to a part-time job in the UK. Yes, at minimum wage, but you're growing. If you can then get 1,000 fans that are paying £10 a month, you're then making £10,000 a month, and 1,000 fans isn't a humongous number to get to, and I think this is where a lot of the kind of I think media is heading, which is that you can build really brilliant and interesting children's brands and children's IP, and not necessarily need a humongous audience. I think a lot of what, say, Ben was preaching yesterday at YouTube, preaches about, their fantastic ad platform. But actually, there's new services now that pop up that allow, people to contribute. And I know, a good amount of creators that make way more money directly from their fans than they do from any ad revenue sources whatsoever. But it's just that niche, and people, if, my niche, I'll put my hands up and say the thing that I'm obsessed with and that I love is I go and watch theme park videos. So I love to watch for some reason, and maybe it will change in a year. But I watch about 3 or 4 daily vloggers who one of them goes to the Disney parks every day and Universal in there. One of them's in the UK and goes around, and then there's another one that goes basically around the world to the other ones. And I think it's them, and then I contribute a monthly subscriber to their content, and they don't pull in huge views. They have like 20,000. One of them has like 20,000 people watching them, but still does it full time. And it's just finding those kind of niches and finding those people that want to hear the stories.
Yeah, like just to add to that, like my niche, for example, is watching Indian street food in India. And like I'm just there, and then I'm calling my mum, like, "Mum, is this how it's like back home?" And then she's like, "Yes, exactly like that." And it's like also these niches and all these things that you can experience through these platforms. It sort of takes you to different places, right? So what I want to do is sort of segue to how sort of TikTok. I suppose that like all platforms. Let's start with Facebook, right? Facebook copied. Through Instagram, they copied Snapchat, right? And then Instagram copied TikTok. There's loads of like copying going on, for example. So Instagram didn't have stories. Now they have stories, right? Because Snapchat had it, and because everyone was using stories. So everyone is slowly starting to copy TikTok. If you've ever been on Instagram, they're really trying to mold the app to be more TikTok-like. The full screen approach and that 9:16 format. So when I say 9:16, I mean portrait mode. So you watch it like this rather than sideways, right? And obviously we've all grown up with widescreen, like 16:9 formats, and now with TikTok sort of going on its sort of crusade and moving forwards with the 9:16 format, a majority of people are consuming a lot of portrait mode formats. And one thing that's quite interesting was there was a company that came out in the middle of the pandemic. It was called Quibi, and Quibi was completely 9:16, like portrait mode format, and it didn't go on for like more than.
I could talk about Quibi a little bit because we pitched some shows to Quibi.
Oh, okay. So I'll pass it straight off to you then. Like, it didn't really get to the
so Quibi was a really interesting. So for those of you that don't know, it was started by Jeffrey Katzenberg, who obviously founded DreamWorks and built lots of the big media empire at Disney in the late 90s, and by Meg Whitman, who her most famous role was as the CEO of eBay and helped build eBay. But they, I think they're a really prime example of a brand that really misunderstood their target market and really misunderstood what they were doing. So lots of the shows we pitched to them were with creators, so with YouTubers or TikTokers, less so TikTokers because TikTok wasn't as big as it was at the time, but definitely YouTubers. And there was a certain level of, shall we say, arrogance against new media, and lots of the content on there wasn't brilliant. And I think that they fundamentally misunderstood their target market, and it wasn't really a surprise. I think Jeffrey's in his 70s, and I think Meg's in her late 60s, and they were trying to make content actually for a market that they'd never ever worked for before. And I think that there's a important. The important story that I think came out of Quibi in some ways was you can have nearly $2 billion and try and launch a streaming platform. And lots of streaming platforms that are surviving a bit longer are falling into the same thing. But fundamentally, they misunderstand what their audience wants and their audience demands. And I don't know if there's anybody that commissions in the room, but, commissioners, I think, particularly struggle with how to commission content for the next sort of generation and more digitally, and there almost needs to be a bit more of a reliance and trust placed on I think producers and production companies that can go out and learn how to do this. And what we do at Studio B, which is rather different, is what we call digital first development. So we develop ideas and we do it back to front, and so we come up with concepts that and think about their digital strategy and how they work across digital before they even become a concept that would go to a commissioner. And I think Quibi just didn't really get that. And they had this really cool feature, which was like you could watch videos like in landscape mode and then in portrait mode. And I think I used it once. And I downloaded the app and got a subscription because I work in the industry. And my business partner was so annoyed because she forgot to cancel her free trial and ended up paying for like 3 months of it. But it's I think a tale actually of how you can actually how somebody that is so well trained and well known in this industry, like Jeffrey Katzenberg, can kind of fail so dramatically because they misunderstand how to engage audiences online. And when you're building an app and you're trying to get people to come and watch content, it's really, really stupid to not listen to them. And I think there's a really common misconception for young audiences that they just want to watch short form content. And more often than not, the reason that they don't watch longer form content is because the sort of long form content they want doesn't exist. But the theme park videos I'll go back to, some of them are like an hour long and I'll sit and watch it. But something that I always get judged for, which I think, I don't know if it's come through your guys' research, but maybe talks to my personality more than anything. But I watch videos now on YouTube and on Netflix at 2 times the speed. So I actually have a different watching experience to others as well.
Yeah, so like in terms of that sort of the formats, like in terms of 916, like because we're consuming more of that content, it's important to think about how does that fit into your sort of plans. As Brandon rightly said, it's sort of like working backwards. So how does it sit in 916, and then you sort of work backwards from there, because that's how most content is consumed. I'm sure everyone uses Instagram stories. That's portrait mode most of the time, and I think format is super important. Thierry, you had a couple of bits to add, isn't it?
Yeah, we were talking about it earlier in terms of how actually there used to be the traditional set would be you'd be building it for that landscape style content, and everything will be shot like that, and then you'd have to make then your adjustments accordingly and go, oh, yeah, I have to get it on Instagram, right, well, we'll cut it down. Oh, I have to get it for this, and you snip it down. Everything looks a bit warped and it wasn't shot correctly. So a lot of times now, actually, it's the other way around. So for the linear, like TV concept is actually probably shot in frame of mind last. So like when we're shooting like TV ads now, the production team have already been given a digital first approach to how that shoot is actually going to happen, and how we're going to chop down that content for banner ads and for social and for paid social, organic social, and how then, for example, like taking it to something completely wild, but like Betfred, for example, how they can do in gaming like odds changing, but the content is the exact same as content they shot like 3 or 4 years ago, but they've thought about that digital first approach, and it's quite smart. And there's some apps out there at the moment. There was one that was called, I think it was called Quaymo, and basically that just takes your old kind of landscape content and you pick your subject matter, and it uses AI to track it and shoot it then in portrait mode for you. So then that way you can repurpose your old content. You don't have to then reshoot. Which is quite a smart way of thinking about it, without the kind of black borders, which looks dead awkward when you're posting content.
Make
and
sure
it clearly doesn't.
Don't show that to your editors.
Yeah,
It edits for you. So
it doesn't look native. I use it for my own content, but whatever. But yeah, it's just being, as we say, like it's all well and good saying, oh, we should plan for it now, but I've spent £2 million getting the content I've done in the last 8 years. What do I do with it? Go back, use a bit of smart AI for you to kind of repurpose that content.
Perfect. Does anyone else have anything to add on 916? Because I'm going to start sort of wrapping it up for like questions. We've got about 15 minutes left. But I suppose as a summary, what we spoke about right at the top of the discussion was social mobility, understanding the platforms and how creators are creating content, how you can take part in that content, and having that right to play within that content. And having all the tools at your disposal on those platforms as well to create content. And then the author versus story, where who has the power, author or story? At the end of the day, the brand always stands true and stands tall. When my nephew sees Fortnite, he screams, So the brand still holds true. So I feel like the author's still got the power there in terms of that, but keep in mind about the algorithms of how these platforms are now changing to now give you what you want, like serve you what you want, and they're just using your data to serve you what you want. So understanding that in terms of the trends and stories. And then finally, 916, I suppose like that's the most actionable step, I suppose, is to understand how you can make more portrait-based content and how you can place that across different mediums, because more and more people are watching content that way. And I mean, probably everyone in the room watches content that way as well. So keeping that in mind as well. But yeah, do you guys have any questions, or do we do the applause first and then questions?
Applause. Any questions?
Yeah.
We,
Yeah, I think you
we
need a
have to wait for
microphone.
them. There's a mic. Mic's coming.
So you mentioned about how obviously in the kind of the land of TikTok and everything, you know, you can actually spend a lot less money on kind of your marketing, be very creative around it. But obviously there's also the negative that comes with that if you do one foot out of turn, then there's this whole cancel culture. And, you know, many people have been kind of subject to that, maybe some deservedly, maybe some not. So even kind of recently, you know, with Lizzo having to re-record or, you know, change the start of her song, you know, so many people just went to the attack instantly and went, this is wrong, and it was very much like cancel Lizzo. And she was someone who, you know, has a very good PR team and also came and, you know, apologised, held her hands up and, you know, moved on with it, and that seems to have faded. But then on the flip side, you've got people like Liam Payne who just, you know, won't stop running his mouth, and obviously you can tell what my algorithm is, by the way. And you know, and so there's a massive big cancel culture around Liam Payne, and you know, and maybe he's caused that himself. But then, you know, as a brand, you know, talking about kids content, you know, there's, you know, what if that happens to someone, you know, with something that's a wholesome kids content, that maybe they took a risk and they tried something creative and it went the wrong way?
I think, you know, it's. I actually think Liam Payne's loving it because it's probably put him in the highest spotlight that he's been in his career since One Direction. But anyway, I think, and he might be a little bit jealous of of Mr. Harry Styles. But I think cancel culture is something that we discuss internally quite a lot because of the nature of the creators we work with. There's always a risk that they've tweeted something that they shouldn't have a while ago, or said something that was taken out of context, and I think it's the nature of the game, and I think increasingly now what's happening when people get quote unquote cancelled, it's happening for an increasingly less amount of time, and I think it's an inherent kind of risk factor, of course. And it's propelled across social media. But what was the old saying was, any press is good press. And I think it's almost definitely down to how you respond to it. So Lizzo, you are completely right, has probably some of the best crisis managers in existence that her team have on call. And I've done some sort of crisis management stuff myself, not for my own, don't worry, I've done nothing, I haven't been cancelled before, but for other folks, and I think it's all down to how you respond. So I've seen people kind of get themselves out of big, deep holes because they know how they're doing it, and I actually think us who have worked, I say us, more so you folks than us, who have worked in traditional television and have worked in traditional media, have dealt with crises in a way before, and a lot of that I think is forgotten for some reason when things happen on social media. And more often than not, these creators unfortunately don't have the right teams and resources around it, whereas almost definitely if you're working, you know, with you know, a big PR agency or someone like that with your brand, you will know how to crisis manage, and it is just a game of crisis management that I think has just become more prevalent, and people have become more aware of issues because of social media. But it's one of those things where what we're going to do is sit in kind of a black box and just forget about the internet and the world. But if you do that, you will become a dinosaur very, very quickly.
I mean, one thing that we do as well with some of our brands is go in. it sounds as if like we're shooting our own ideas down, but we go in with a plan of if and when we get cancelled, what you do. Quite literally, because I think because it's so intrinsically linked to how you respond, if you're caught on the back foot, then it's problematic. Then you start doing stuff like deleting tweets and everything else, and it's like, oh, they're hiding stuff, we've got screenshots, and then it's game over. But I think that cancel culture is a really interesting topic in general, because I actually think cancel culture was accountability until we had lockdown and we had nothing to do. Then it became witch hunting. And so then it's gone above and beyond where something has been, I need to hold this brand accountable for something they've done because they're generally wrong, to like, I want to almost like feel vindicated or go after somebody just for that essence, and then mob mentality occurs on social media. So when we do that, when we go out with campaigns, we do say, okay, well, what if this thing does get cancelled? Like what happens and people come after us? Where are we accountable, and where is the actual witch hunt occurring? Because if you know where then you should be accountable for, because you may have strayed a little bit outside of your niche, then you understand how to deal with that. And the witch hunt thing then becomes that you've seen brands just turn around and actually mock the witch hunt. And it becomes almost like a bit of a viral campaign there, where they're kind of like, go on then, because they've planned for that thing to happen. And we live in a society now where, unfortunately, it is now part of our marketing strategy. Like, we have to plan for, it not going too well. In the same way that we have to repurpose content if it doesn't land.
Yeah, we've got a question here as well.
I was heartened to hear that you watch long form, because it's quite a myth that young people only watch short form. But I did nearly walk out when you said you watch things at twice the pace.
I do apologise.
What I was going to ask was, you talked about social mobility right at the start. When you're talking about the opportunities for people, a lot of that is kind of front of camera opportunities, so they're presenting or they're appearing in content. What are the through lines to support people moving from those kind of gigs to more sustainable careers, like your own careers? What's the opportunity there, and is that a level playing field? Because to me, it still seems a little gatekeepery, because most of the people that are creating opportunities are people my age, for younger people, and there's still a lot of cherry picking there.
Well, what I'll say kind of on hiring is I almost I think a third of our development team have YouTube channels or have started YouTube channels themselves in the past. And maybe this is kind of the new generation myself of hiring. I'm only 21 and hiring people that are around my age or older. And I think I really couldn't care less if you went to university. So that, I think, already levels a lot of playing fields. And because I work in content, I want people that are interested in content. And actually, the most modern way that people show that is through creating videos online. And I equally, when maybe not quite, I was only a small wee child when YouTube started, so it was a little bit later for me. I made YouTube. My first company was in Minecraft, and I used to make Minecraft Let's Play videos myself. And I think those are the most exciting people that we hire and look for. And they come from all walks of life and come from around the world. And I think it's maybe going to take time. And it's the same with, I think, issues that the traditional industry has with diversity and things like that. Those, my company, I think 70% of staff outside of myself and the founder, my other founder, and our board are persons of color and of that. And they weren't necessarily hired because they were persons of color. They were hired because they made really interesting videos and showed that. And I think what I love about this generation is the fact that, for young people today, the biggest job that they want to do is be a YouTuber. And actually, I think what I find so exciting is that being a YouTuber isn't just about making videos. It's 90% of what I do in my job is business and is negotiations and doing that sort of stuff. And I learned all of that through working with YouTubers and through that. And so I think the skill set you get when you're filming your own videos is you're filming your own videos, you're editing them, you're directing them, you're producing them, and they're all really, really valuable skills that actually, when people have gone down the traditional route and they've gone to film school, you're taught it in a certain way. Whereas I love people that have kind of figured it all out themselves. And
I still do think there's a problem, though. I still do think there's definitely a problem. I think you are right. I still do think that although your company is shining the light in terms of the way they're kind of moving on, and honestly I applaud you because you're the 1%, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
I still do think there is a problem because, as we say, like 10 youngsters could go viral, all from different social economic class backgrounds, colour, everything else like that. And yes, the gatekeepers still will cherry pick. Hence why we still have some people who are doing collaborations with the likes of, within the fashion industry, that there is a clear colorism issue there, for example, regardless of, what's happened and who's gone viral, and even if the algorithms have allowed everybody to float to the top. I definitely do think so. And I think it's down to, us in the room as well, because at the end of the day, if we're producing kids' content, we are trying to show them what, society looks like. And I think if we are then cherry picking those individuals to show them and go, actually, this is what society looks like, and it's a different view from what they actually see, I think that's wrong. And then it goes to exactly the type of content you were talking about, where you were talking about the content that we commission and why the reason people don't watch your videos because their content is not there. And so then we should be commissioning shows exactly like that. So whether it's like things like sex education and things like that have, gone viral because they're showing, young black men in heterosexual, homosexual situations, who also is my cousin, by the way. Anyone? Fun fact for you guys there. That's exactly what we should be championing and be cherry picked.
And sex education was pitched to every major broadcaster in the UK before Netflix picked it up. So everyone, they tried to sell it, to a UK broadcaster, and they didn't. And it's that kind of, I think, in some ways, the thing that I love about diversity, the statistic that I love whenever I see like a headline about Donald Trump and racism in it, is the fact that Generation Z and people under 24 in America, less than 50% of them are white. And so, that's increasingly, if you want to look for diversity, there are more diverse young people in this country than there are diverse older people in this country. And so when you look at, the population as a whole, diversity seems less, but diversity and issues like that are propelled so much more in young people. So, I always say, and my statement always is, if you want to make brilliant content for young people, you should probably be hiring them.
Thank you.
Perfect.
I actually have something else to add to your question, or another lens to apply to it, even so. I think something else to think about as well in social media, not necessarily so much about social mobility, but I think the beauty of it is that we're able to maybe champion and hero skills or niches or jobs that potentially were silenced before. So I don't know if this is a bit of a tenuous link, but during lockdown, there were loads of kind of skills and jobs that became kind of almost glorified in many ways. So, for example, there were postmen who went viral on TikTok. There were all the key workers. There were the chefs, etc. And there was this whole kind of community and celebration of people coming together during a difficult time, and kind of skill sets that perhaps weren't worthy enough to make you famous before. Suddenly, people were kind of looking up to, and it was kind of this exciting community of content creators who were had the ability to go viral from the things that they do in their everyday, and I think that's really powerful.
The guy that I was watching on my phone was this guy on TikTok called the Pool Guy, and he cleans pools. Never in my million years had I ever really thought about somebody. I think mainly because here we don't really have pools in the UK, but there's this huge kind of TikTok thing that got on my feed for 6 months solid, basically of this guy cleaning pools, and it was like
I think I had something similar with dash cams, delivery drivers with dash cams.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah,
bit of a strange one, but yeah, it works.
Yeah,
somehow.
No wonder parcels didn't turn up.
Unfortunately, we've only got a minute left. So any other questions, you can ask it afterwards. But I do have an announcement, I must say. If everyone could make their way out, the bar is open. But be back in the main stage for the creative keynote starting at 6:30. So have fun, but not too much fun.
Thanks, guys.